everyone, and welcome to Darker Days number 24. I'm Mike, and I'm here with Mark and Chris. How are the two of you?
Doing great.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Mike. Yeah, I've just coming from the pub with part of my gaming group, actually, so pretty good.
Oh,
Cool,
excellent.
cool.
Outstanding.
Yeah, that's why you were swearing so much in the pre-show.
Oh, yeah.
Half a pint of shandy and he's out of control.
Well, just to start things off, we're gonna be pretty serious for a second because, Darker Days, our schedule's been a little dodgy lately. Haven't had too many episodes, and I was blaming it on the fact that I was working on my third dot in science, but that's actually not true. What was really going on is I was cheating on the World of Darkness.
You swine.
Ooh.
That's right. I was having an affair with BattleTech.
Oh, God.
BattleTech.
Do you listen to, this is where I have to name drop, an actually pretty good podcast, actually, for guys to listen to. The Fear the Boot one as well. There's one of the guys on there is pretty big into his BattleTech as well. So
I listen to it sometimes, but
Yeah.
I gotta say, White Wolf, it's not you, it's me. or maybe it's actually Catalyst, because it's gonna be a little snipe at White Wolf here, but they release errata and they fix their books, so the next print run isn't gonna have the same errors. They fix their PDFs. It's so nice. It's so nice. Please,
if
White
only
Wolf.
Games Workshop could do that as well.
Oh God.
They
That's
could, but
an
they charge you
age-long
twice
issue
the
I
price for
have.
it, so, yeah.
Well, Games Workshop, they did fix the Dark Elf book for 6th edition, so they did that 10 years ago.
Yeah, I have a
Well-
long-running information on that thing, but that's another day. Anyway, so you've been drawn away from White Wolf for a bit.
Well, for a little bit. But here's what actually happened this week. I walked into the local game store because I wanted to pick up a new battle mech, get a miniature. Turns out they didn't have any good ones. There were a bunch of lame Solaris 7, silly battle mechs. And then I kind of walked over to the RPG section, and they had all these new used books. And I was looking. I saw this great new game that I've never owned before called Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's supposed to be pretty rad, man.
yeah, I picked it up. It's totally sweet.
Excellent. Which edition?
2nd edition.
Oh, nice. Good. With the holes in the cover. Cool.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I've been digging into that, and it's pretty much what I've been doing. How about you guys?
Well, infidelity must be in the air. I'm still running Mage on Skype when time permits. But next week, I'm starting another series of Primetime Adventures with a Tuesday night group. And after that, I'm going to get to run Torg. Sorry.
Torg.
Oh, my God. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
That's WEG D6 system, right?
No, D20.
Or
but,
D20. Oh, right, okay. Because, the last time I heard about Torg was when I played Star Wars 2nd edition revised bucket load of D6.
right. Well, it's that
Best
old,
version.
so yeah.
Yeah, that's the best version of Star Wars, if I'm to say anything about Star Wars. But anyway,
Yeah, at the end of it, they said maybe after that you can run Werewolf. So Werewolf's getting a lot of love, so that might be fun. But,
Very cool.
yeah,
Very cool.
mainly Torg. I'm just geeking out about that. So yeah. What about you, Chris?
in the last week, not this Monday, but the Monday before, I finished my Changeling Venice Chronicle, so that came to a conclusion, leaving plenty of plot hooks open, plenty of plot hooks closed, and players certainly frustrated with certain NPCs they wanted to kill, but realized he might be a nice person, but I'm not too sure yet. And so I'm now running a Chronicle of Exalted, which I've tried running twice previously, but had gaming groups fall apart. So it's good to play Exalted. It pushes you to write plots in a different way than you would do for a modern setting, because of course investigation skills mean nothing when you can't actually look at fingerprints. So it's I find it a bit of a dry run for writing plots for things like, again, say something like Vampire the Dark Ages or Requiem for Rome, or say maybe a Tudor Age period Mage Chronicle, or Mage just one shot. So I've got various ideas based off that. But Exalted's cool, second edition. It's filled with dice and people wanting to quote their favorite anime series.
Did you say Mage the Tudors?
I've thought because I've run in the past. My vampire setting is set in Manchester, and so I'm hoping to run. It's still in my head, and it's on the books once I get the Changeling ebook finished. To start sorting out my Mage setting for Manchester, and that of course allows me to tie in historical things that have occurred with the fact that the great astrologer occultist John Dee, who was for Queen Elizabeth I, he was at one point in Manchester as the head of the college there. So there's
which college?
Just a church college. So he's just head of like a group, kind of like an order there at the time. I thought it'd be kind of cool to do Mage during the Tudor period, and it happens that a one-shot game is being organised right now, and we have 4 options, and the other person that's going to run it is put forward an option, and one of these is kind of wizards during the Tudor period. So we may or may not use Mage, but it's nice to have someone run something to act as a brain candy for Mage for me.
Of course, the Tudors has had such a lot of airplay over here with the TV show running for a couple of years. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is Mage Sorcerer's Crusade like around that time? I thought it was the Renaissance period.
It's early years. You can capture the Tudor period with its earlier years, but it tends to normally be a little bit later than that. Gotcha. Some good source material there.
Cool. Actually, Chris, could you kind of talk about your Changeling and Vampire projects that you've been working on? Because we've had you on a couple times and haven't really asked about that.
In what way? I mean, I'm happy to answer whatever questions you guys have got. Really, I
just gave you the floor to pimp your stuff. Come on, go for it.
Okay. So basically, the Manchester setting for Vampire that I've developed was born out of Vampire the Masquerade back in the days when they brought out things like Gilded Cage, and a few of the later source books that were really kind of explaining how elders worked and how you would live your life over numerous decades and influence people. And from that, I really thought about how different groups within the clans worked, because one of the things that didn't work for me too well was like, you're embraced into a clan, and by default you're part of the Camarilla, and so I was more interested in the politics of how the Camarilla worked internally. And then by the time I'd actually thought out what I might run for it, Requiem came out, of course, and bye old world of darkness. And Requiem was quite refreshing because it allowed you to develop a setting where characters could be members of multiple covenants. You're a Carthian, yet you believe in the doctrine of the Testament of Longinus. So out of that, I retrofitted my Manchester setting a lot and ended up with what I have now, which is an ongoing political story where the current coterie has one person who played in the previous chronicle, and the game has escalated from a very coterie-driven, a coterie gets employed by some elder to go, do this, I want you to help me in my election campaign because I'm a Carthian and I want to be the new prefect of the Carthians, so I need to be elected and you're going to help me do it. And that was mainly what the plot of the first chronicle is. And now in the second chronicle, one of the characters is back with a new coterie, simply because we've got new players, and the aim for that is to up the game. So previously, where that one player was part of a coterie, they're now leading a coterie for their own political gain as they become one of the harpies of the city. And where we focus mainly on the political intrigue of the Carthians, where it was to do with, they have a a political system where you have where the city has a board of representatives, one seat for each clan, one seat for each covenant, and various politics to do with, well, the Ordo Draco were banned from votes and so forth. The game now focuses on the coterie are operating at a higher level, so they're not only dealing with problems from the Carthians, but the next story I'm writing that I've written up is to do with them going to a Lancashire Sanctum Mass. Yeah, Vampire is pretty close to my heart and close to a lot of the players' hearts because it's just political fun.
Well, I was particularly drawn to your write-ups in that because of Manchester. I had my Mage game traditionally has been set there. The current one is in London, actually, but all the others were set in Manchester. Well, primarily because I was at university there, so you can
Well, same here.
Yeah. Is the Changeling one set in similarly in somewhere that you've got personal experience with, or is that more drawn from imagination?
Changeling's set in Venice, where I've been to twice. I went there with my wife when we were only just going out, and we went to a masquerade ball there.
Oh yeah, I've seen those carnival pictures. That's right. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and then we got engaged there. So the year after, we got married there and took our close family there because taking everyone would be insane. So I've read quite a bit on Venice, and I've got the book and the DVD to Francesco de Mosto's Venice, which was a BBC series, which I highly recommend because Francesco de Mosto is a brilliant historian and presenter of history in general. And so I haven't
seen that.
It's awesome. He's got one which covers Italy, and he's got one which covers the Adriatic as well. So he talks about kind of like how Venice and Italy influences the area around it. He's also got a cookery book of all things, but these are Italians. They're great. And so Venice is just like laden with history, more so than anywhere else in the world. And as Byron put it, it's the fairy tale city. So it made sense to set Changeling there. And Changeling there, for my own setting, which I've got almost ready to let out as an ebook for people to use, focuses on the idea of another court called the Court of Carnival. So I've got some rules for the mantle for it and its own political systems, and the idea that Venice is all about masks, obviously. Yeah. So the Freehold has such power over Carnival that it's able to hide itself from the true Fae. So when the true Fae come into the city, they can't even see changelings because of the mask. But that's the very idea of Carnival is of sacrifice, because the word Carnival it comes from possibly the root words of farewell to the flesh. So the Freehold has to make a great sacrifice at some point in order to have this amazing defense against the true Fae. So even though, say, the true Fae's, privateers and loyalists are able to see other changelings in the city, the true Fae themselves have very little hold over the city because of the magnitude of the pledge that's been made. And so the seasonal courts become houses. They become royal houses within this setting. And the politics are whether the houses want to keep Carnival in power or remove it and reinstate the seasonal rule, which is similar to, say, how the Miami setting is put out in Changeling the Lost, where you've got summer is always in control. And so we finished that with a plot line with a true Fae that was making use of the bloodline of a forger of paintings. And it was all to do with the creation of a clock made of bones, and the true Fae was making gateways through these two paintings that were linked to the painter Titian, who was a famous painter in Venice. And eventually the characters worked out what was going on. There were some quite hefty puzzles to be sorted out. And when I say puzzles, they're more kind of like riddles that one of the things I like doing in the games is rewarding the players for their own intelligence, and I don't like to let the rules. I like the rule. Obviously, you need the rules to help them through it, but I also like to reward players for their own ingenuity as a group, because it makes them feel really invested in the game. Like, oh, I solved that puzzle. I know why this bastard's killing everyone. Let's
Excellent.
use that and have the initiative and take them all out before they get the chance. And so it's one of these things like, if you've ever used puzzles within games, do you let the character roll or do you let the player of the character try and solve it on their own? And it's about how to balance that reward. And the plot of my game would have carried on as it would have, but depending upon how quickly they would have solved this mystery, they could have, as protagonists, influenced the plot sooner. And they did. They realized what was going on. They knew where they needed to go, what type of thing they were dealing with, and so they had the issue with them was really how to really stop this true Fae coming into their reality.
Excellent. Yeah, it's important that the players have that agency and that degree of input and control into the game, and taking that away from taking it away from dice rolls a little bit can only serve to increase that, I think. So that sounds really good. And Venice, of course, is a fantastic setting. So yeah. It's
yeah. I mean, my plan is I plan to write 1 or 2 paragraphs for each of the other supernaturals, that could inhabit Venice, because Venice turns up quite heavily in old school, Vampire the Masquerade with the Fourth Crusade in Dark Ages, with Narses at the head of the cult of Cain and so forth. Yeah. So my idea with Venice in its current setting is because when you've been there, you realise Venice is a tiny place, really.
It's
you
not
can walk
big, no.
across. I mean, myself and my wife spent most of the time walking across it. You see most stuff by walking rather than taking a boat down the Grand Canal. So I don't imagine vampires would really want to live there, because it'd be bloody obvious if you start killing people and draining them of blood. So I like the idea of introducing vampires as being on the mainland and being given kind of like a pass, being given a pledge by the changelings, like, okay, you're allowed on the mainland because, and they get something in return. And of course, mages would go to Venice because it has certain magics related to it. There are so many ghost stories and tales to do with, say, Vivaldi, and things to do with the island of the dead called San Michele, or Paveglia, which you yourself spoke about ages ago on one of the secret frequencies. So there's lots of plot to do with that. I think I might look into it because I introduced it because I only just bought the books. Geist and Book of the Dead, I did a changeling story where they went into the underworld and went into the underworld reflection of Paveglia.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'd like to do it. That was a. I don't think you're gonna kill him. He's a caribou. I think you should run. And the brilliant thing that came from that was when one of the players go, well, if we're in the underworld and I've just felt the weird course through me, and I'm not too sure reason why. Does that mean we're tied to the very essence of death? Does that mean the Fae are tied to death? And when I heard that, I was like, you are spot on. And I'm not going to tell you you're spot on, but that's brilliant. I'm glad you had that level of insight suddenly, because that's just said to you, we can kill these bastards. We can take the Fae out. And
brilliant.
Yeah. So I would say, again, Book of the Dead to anyone, if you've not picked it up. That's an absolutely awesome book with stuff for Mage, and I think there's an entire discipline set for vampires to consume ghosts. So
always good.
Yeah. So that's basically it. I'm actually playing with something that isn't World of Darkness. I'm playing with Exalted, for Christ's sake.
Nice one.
All right, and with that, we've got a pretty in-depth episode this time, so I guess we'll head over to the network news. So, Mirage Arcana released episode number 26 last week, and it's about building better villains, and it talks about different inspiration that the hosts have had for their villains, and there's also a very nice segment about how to use music and soundtracks in your games, so I'd highly recommend it. It's actually a really useful episode for any kind of role-playing game.
Cool. I haven't listened to that one yet. It downloaded onto my Winamp the other day, but I use music all the time in my game, so I have to check that out. It's worth a listen. Cool.
Yeah, I queue up. I have I don't queue music for particular points in my game, but I have soundtracks put together in I kind of cue them in thirds, like, the first third is kind of backgroundy music, and as it goes forward, it has a feeling of escalation of tension. So that's the way I make use of music in games. Mike, do you make use of music in the same way, or do you cue it up, or do you just put something on in the background?
The one time I wanted to use music in my game, I was running actually Legend of the Five Rings using the Storyteller system, the old Storyteller system. And I put some music on, and then my friend was like, "That's crap, turn that off." And he popped in his own CD with like some punk rock. So it didn't really work out that well that time. But surprise, surprise, I'm thinking about Werewolf the Apocalypse right now. And I kind of want to use, if anyone's familiar with the game, MechWarrior 2, the Battletech game, has very interesting tribal kind of music in the background. It's really well done.
MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries, it would have been called, I think.
There's actually three. There's MechWarrior 2 Ghost Bear's Legacy, and MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries.
I remember the first one. Mercenaries.
Yeah, but that's cool music, and I'd probably use that, just play the quick, 90-second track to kind of, put people in the mood of what's to come. And so one track might be like, oh, there's going to be a fight, in the woods, or an industrial fight. Or perhaps there's going to be something spiritual, mysterious happening in the next scene. That's kind of how I'd use it.
Okay. Cool.
I would highly recommend for you, based upon that, look at a band or an act. I guess an act is a better way to describe it, called Sephiroth. And again, they're more dark ambient music, so there's no lyrics, and again it's very tribal, and I make use of that from anything from vampire to playing anything sci-fi wise, because it gives you the sense of there's some unspeakable primal evil.
Actually, well, I do a bit of a combination with individual tracks for specific things and also more general background music. So I'm kind of somewhere between the two of you, I think, on that. Very
cool.
I've got a few playlists posted up on my own gaming blog anyway, so again, I'll link that anyway, so you guys and everyone else can have a look and see what they want to take a pick of.
Excellent.
Sounds good. And with that, let's move over to White Wolf News. Now, we haven't done this in a while. Last time was episode 22, which was back in February. So White Wolf has put out quite a bit of stuff, and I'm actually going to switch it up right now, because we're going to save the big news for last. And we're going to start off with the Danse Macabre. And Chris, you've been reading that, you said.
Yeah, I've had a read of maybe the first third or so. The things that strike me is obviously the extra bits of gameplay adds. It adds the idea of the different tiers, which were something that they introduced back in Hunter and reinforced in other games such as Geist. And so in Vampire they add the idea of these higher level of gameplay where you've got these world-spanning conspiracies, which are really just a reflection of the Covenants already in Requiem. And they're pretty cool because they I guess for people it takes Requiem back towards a certain level of gameplay that's more akin to Vampire the Masquerade. The other thing that I would say that's great about the game is it gives another discussion of the clans themselves and how to make use of them and what their Requiem is. And in particular, I noted they had these Masquerade and Requiem descriptors for your character. So it's almost like saying what is. So I believe in Hunter they have your profession. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So they have the equivalent for a character's Requiem and a character's Masquerade. So it represents what face do you present humanity. So it's almost a profession. You go, oh, I'm an artiste, or I'm a politician, and then it has the role that you perform within your Requiem, which is your life with the vampire. So are you an investigator, an occultist, or some sort of investigator? And they're great systems because at first glance, if anything, they just help players that aren't too sure where their characters should fit into the game. It reinforces certain roles, certain stereotypes or archetypes that they can play. And so you've got a lot to work with and guidelines on how to make better characters, really. So all in all, Dark Sparrow is pretty awesome, actually. And that's even at not having read it all. There's just like going through it. There's so much to mine for ideas.
Do you think that they're going to be starting to put out the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 design for pretty much all the games, or did they just want to expand it to Vampire in this case?
I would say having something of this nature for... I don't know whether Werewolf would be the appropriate one, because they've had the Werewolf Chronicler's Guide that's come out in a series recently, but I would say for Mage it would be particularly helpful. I can't remember how it kind of corresponds with the Mage Chronicler's Guide, but the idea of just looking into how each of these tiers works is rather useful, because again it allows you to focus the game in different ways, because as much as fun as it is to play a new character, it's also fun playing a character that has a ton of experience behind them and a history, and the issues you're looking at are far larger. So I think it'd be useful for pretty much every game. Guys, obviously not, because that has its own system for dealing with tiers. Changeling, I wouldn't say it would be as much use. Definitely Mage, though, an insight into tiers.
Well, there is some coverage of that in the Mage Chronicler's Guide. And Mage, generally has had the tier system inbuilt from the word go, from the level of the Cabal to the Concilium, up to the world-spanning orders, and certainly the ministries of the Seers of the Throne.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But seeing it explicitly addressed on those terms, I think is it can only be a good thing.
Interesting. Well, you guys are going to have to wait until the Promethean Rapid Fire for my ideas for Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 Promethean created.
Tier 3 Prometheans, whoa.
What the hell is a Tier 3 Promethean?
I've already got the idea. You guys are going to have to listen to it.
Okay, all right.
All right, but moving on. Mark, you've checked out Mage Noir, correct?
Yeah, I had a look at that. To be honest, when they announced it, we heard there was going to be some more books for Mage the Awakening. I couldn't wait, and then Mage Noir. I thought, oh, okay. I'm not a big fan of noir. All right, I'll look at it. And actually, it's really, really good. I didn't really get a proper understanding of what the setting would be until it occurred to me that this is the period of, the latter years of World War II and the years immediately following it. So you put it in that context, and immediately you have a ton of story opportunities there. The book itself it's not huge. It's like 80 odd pages, but there's all sorts of good stuff in there, as you might expect. Solid coverage of characters who have fought in the war or fighting in the war and have just fought. And by the way, for Ascension players, you guys will know that that's a very pivotal time for the traditions, the technocracy, and the Nefandi. So it's worth looking at, even if you're not an Awakening player. There's a new legacy in there, all about keeping magic hidden, which ties into some of the more modern groups in the World of Darkness. There's a pretty disturbing look at the atomic bomb, and a couple of really interesting ways of using that in your game.
I was going to say, what do they do with nukes in it? Because it's a pivotal point with regard to science, let alone regard to politics and society.
Culture,
I mean, look at you only have. I'm still reading through the Seers of the Throne book. I mean, every day I'm still on my smartphone scrolling through PDF, and the Seers of the Throne are a scary organization, and I can imagine that the end of World War II set such great upheaval for them, because it's the end of belief in certain things and the start of belief in other things, like with regard to the Paternoster and the Unifiers and so forth.
It's just interesting you mention them, because Mage Noir makes it very explicit. It says the atomic bomb is not the work of the Seers of the Throne, and actually there's a good solid sidebar, good half page dedicated to that subject. But I won't spoil it for people who've not got the book, so that's worth checking out for that alone.
Wow, I now need it.
Even cooler than that, there's an awakened version of Operation Paperclip. called Operation Oracle. Operation Paperclip, for those who don't know, was an operation at the end of the war when certain Nazi scientists were given, for want of a better word, refuge in Allied countries in return for them sharing their knowledge and their expertise. So Operation Oracle is the Mage version of that, where mages who were on the losing side have been plucked away from the jaws of defeat and are now going about their business under different auspices.
Wow.
Lots of fun. There's a classic look at the hard-boiled noir stories, your Maltese, Falcon, Raymond Chandler kind of thing, which is what I expected the whole book to be about. And I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that it's there, of course, but doesn't overwhelm the rest of the material in there. And there's a short adventure, I think 5-scene SAS style adventure, and a sample cabal at the end who you could plug into your own games. So pleasantly surprised. I go for the more esoteric angle on Mage. Astral Realms and Secrets of the Ruined Temple and those kind of things are my favorite books. But Mage Noir, no, I can recommend it. And especially if you want to have a game that's tied closely to real-world antics and specifically set in the period after the Second World War, this is the one to go to. Yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. And, of course, Volume 3 of the Forsaken Chronicler's Guide came out, and I haven't read it yet. But there's quite a bit of information about it in our previous episode where we interviewed David Hill. And I just wanted to say something we didn't bring up was just how useful it is for Werewolf the Apocalypse because, surprise, surprise, I've been thinking about that game quite a bit lately. And there's definitely some ideas you can steal from that. So I'll be combing it for such ideas in the future.
Okay, well, we haven't done any full-on reviews in a few shows, so maybe we should have a couple of reviews thrown your way. As a couple of Mage books I'd love to give a review to, and maybe if the Chronicler's Guide is in good enough shape, we could do some coverage on that too.
Well, Mark, you've been promising to do World of Darkness Gypsies for about the past 6 months.
I have it almost entirely written up too. I've had some outstandingly good ideas. Look, we redeemed
book that White Wolf writers deny exists if you listen to their own podcasts.
We redeemed the Skinner and we redeemed Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand. Not that it needed redeeming, but we did it anyway. I think I've got to set the bar higher and tackle gypsies. Okay. All right, next show, gypsies.
Nice. And of course, April Fool's joke, Paths of Storytelling Vampire. I died
Fantastic.
to El Diablo Verde.
Yeah, me too.
I've not played with it. I really haven't. I've had too much other stuff to do.
Well, keep away from the wrestler.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been thinking about trying to tweet through it and just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go do this. How bad could it be?" And then next tweet is, "Oh my god, I'm dead."
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. And for print on demand, they released Gehenna, the final Vampire the Masquerade source book, as well as Clan Book Ventrue, the revised one, and they're pretty cheap.
Good.
It's like $21 for Gehenna and $10 for the Ventrue Clan Book. So it's all good.
Right, okay. And what are the delivery costs on that like? Do you know?
I think for one book it's about $4, and then it's like an extra $1 for each book. I don't really remember exactly, but I think I mentioned that in my review of Print on Demand. And they have a printer in England, so the two of you can probably get pretty cheap delivery costs.
Cool. I have both of those, but there's some stuff I wouldn't mind getting hold of. That'd be nice.
That's good news to me. That's really cool.
Indeed. And
where is this printer? I want it.
Go into DriveThruRPG, click Now in Print, and then click on White Wolf. They've got 12 books now.
Physically.
It means physically the printer. Where is it?
I want to be there as people order their books so I can lick them for them.
Oh my... What?
This book comes pre-licked by Chris from Darker Days.
Okay. Anyway... Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse have had their comic books released by Moonstone, and these are both PDF and print on demand from DriveThruRPG. I would recommend that you don't get the print on demand because it's pretty pricey. It's like $9 for a 48-page color comic.
Ouch.
Yeah, but the PDF's only $2, and I've read all the vampire ones and some of the werewolf, and I'll recommend to you guys Definitely the Nosferatu comic. That's got some really cool images in it. The story itself is not too like amazing, but I really liked it, and I definitely recommend it to people. The other one is the La Zambra comic book, which was written by James Lauder, if I remember correctly, and that one's got a very good story. It's very interesting.
Okay.
And the final one is the Lucita. Lucita as in the signature character of the La Zambra clan. And that one's pretty interesting, mostly because it was definitely written by someone that was familiar with Vampire the Masquerade and references a bunch of the early Chicago source books.
Oh wow! Okay, cool.
Yep.
I never checked those out when they came out, so that's probably worth giving a look now.
Yep.
I can't quite remember which one I actually bought. It's the one with the vampire that pretends to be a vampire on TV. Is that right? I can't remember which. Was that a David story or?
No, that's it's the Toreador one. It's the first issue.
Yeah. There's me referencing David for Christ's sake. Yeah. Yeah, that was an ancient one. I don't know where I've got that. Wow. But yeah, print on demand for comics. Decent. Do you think we need comics for New World of Darkness? I'd like to see something of that form.
Would be fun. Yeah.
It could be interesting. I know there's an Exalted comic book that came out, and that's been selling pretty well on drive-thru.
They're awesome. They're really good.
Yeah, the Moonstone comics were pretty mediocre. Like the first three are all done by the same guy. He did the Toreador one, which is mediocre. It's really just a review of Kindred history. Then he did the Nosferatu one, which I really liked, and then he did the Ventru one, which it still doesn't make any sense to me. I can't understand what the story was.
Okay, right.
So, yeah. And with that, the big announcement. Vampire the Masquerade, 20th anniversary.
You know something we don't?
Yep.
So the world doesn't end at the end of 2012? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, outrageous. I mean, did not see that one coming. That was fantastic to read about that. I'm hugely excited. Slightly shocked at the price, but I suppose if it's a once in a blue moon kind of thing, maybe it's something I could reach deep into my pockets for. $100 for those who don't know.
Yeah, I've been very interested in the open development aspect that they're taking. So they write something up. Justin Achille, Eddie Webb, Russell Bailey, Rich Thomas, all those folks. They make a little write-up, put it online, and see what the fan feedback is. And most of it's been pretty good. A lot of very good suggestions by people. The only thing I don't like about it, my only reservation, is that they're using this blog software. So you're not really able to get nitty-gritty and be able to present, like, I don't know, graphs or something, because I was very interested in they're talking about botches, and they're trying to fix that mechanic. And I really wanted to, like, get in there, and I couldn't get the equations from the Google Doc that they linked to, and even if I did, I would have no way of easily presenting my own findings and ideas to the developers.
I found a couple of the blogs wouldn't load for me. The first one where they were showing art previews, I couldn't get to see any of the pictures. But other than that, it's a brave approach to take, I think, given how internet fandom can be. But like you say, most of it's been pretty sensible, pretty restrained. And there's been some good insights there. We mentioned this in the pre-show. The way they've tackled the dodge mechanic is good to see.
What was the conclusion with the dodge? They're kind of taking a route that's similar to they took in Orpheus, was it not? That they kind of bundled it in with
athletics, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that is something new. So awareness. So they seem to have gone that route. But
awarenesses was in Mage, I think. I just read the other day it's in Vampire too. So it's a good trait to have. Really handy, you know. Yeah. It's a way to avoid having to use disciplines or spheres, and you know, with the risks that come attached to those, but still allows the storyteller to reveal and drip feed supernatural style information to the characters.
Seems like it's going to be an interesting product. A lot of people have already pre-ordered. They're all really excited about it. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick it up myself, but we'll see what happens. Actually, I do want to bring up that I was doing a little research, and I found a post by Eddie Webb, and someone asked whether or not this is going to be available after the limited edition pre-order, which is going on right now. And I'll quote what he says. So, quote, "To more accurately address your point, though, I think it is extremely unlikely that the pre-order period will be the only way to get the book. Although, obviously, the limited edition nature of the pre-order will probably be unavailable. I'm just not sure what form and at what price point getting the book after pre-order will take. And I don't know if we'll have the answer to that before pre-orders are done. Edit.
Yeah.
To be clear, I also don't think the innards of the book will be different at all. The parts in question are how it will be printed and probably what form the cover will take." End quote.
Right. Okay. Cool. Well, I mean, that'd be interesting to see. I can see them going for a non-full color version as the non-limited version.
Yeah.
To keep the price under control.
Mm-hmm.
With the amount of pages that tome is going to clock in at the end, yeah, a non-color version and more than likely non-hardback would be the general kind of available one. But
it makes sense if they've got the print on demand up and running and they have the files there. There's going to be people who want to buy it. It's a no-brainer that they're going to keep it available.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely.
I mean, for me, the interesting thing was when there was a thread that started on RPGNet. I think it was right after the announcement was made, and I think the title was something like "What do you want to see in Vampire: The Masquerade 20th Edition?" And I was on the same page as those posters who all said Mage 20th edition. That's what we want to see.
Yep.
So I'm going to be buying it probably just to ensure that they make a Mage one in a year or two's time.
how much, out of interest, does is there a particular time between Vampire 20th edition to their developments of the online game? Because I'm sure that it has to be some of the things that are filtering back into the tabletop must be linked to what they're designing for the online. I mean, as I said, the online game can't be exactly the same thing as you do on tabletop, but there are certain ideas that are evolving and growing. It'll be interesting to find out what relationships there are between this edition of Vampire the Requiem, and eventually the online game. But depends if they want to talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think the online game is probably going to draw more inspiration from a combination of Requiem and Masquerade, rather than this 20th edition of Masquerade is drawing inspiration from those sources. Because the Masquerade seem to be pretty keenly trying to stay true to the original, with all its bells and whistles. But the online game, they've said, we're going to base it on Masquerade, but we're not going to be limited by that. We're going to draw the best ideas from that, but fold in fresh ideas from the New World of Darkness, which they're more or less explicitly not doing with the 20th edition version.
Yeah.
So I think they'll stand apart to one degree or another.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the 20th edition almost feels like a cementation of the product itself, of the IP, the franchise of Vampire the Masquerade, because they've chosen Vampire the Masquerade for the online game for a particular reason, because it's better known. But they've not denied that they're taking into the online game certain thoughts and ideas that they've taken from Requiem. And I mean, it's quite clear in what we talked about with David Hill, like where you have to consider how certain mechanics in a tabletop game are completely different when you deal with a LARP and when you deal with an online multi-user dungeon. So obviously there's a consideration then again about how you deal with hundreds and thousands of people playing online. So yeah, I can see how it ties in with cementing Masquerade as this is what Masquerade is, and this is what you're kind of getting into with the online game. Yeah,
well, we've got a feature on that coming up actually later in the show. But one thing that didn't get mentioned in that, and I was thinking about it the other day, was I thought it would be really kind of amusing to see if we could broadcast an episode of Darker Days live from within the online game.
Wow!
Like actually go in and have our characters, have characters that set up a radio studio and then broadcast, within the game world. But I don't know if
go into radio studio. We start broadcasting. We get staked.
Yeah.
Damn.
It would be kind of fun to try.
It would be. Yeah, that sounds cool. All right. Well, I think we've done the news portion to death. I mean, that was an intense discussion. So, Mark, let's move over to the secret frequency.
He took the stairs. I love my mom.
All right. Well, this episode on the secret frequency is something I've been looking at for a while and decided tonight would be the night to bust it out. It's a phenomenon that's not so much creepy as it is downright strange, namely the hum. What is the hum? Well, the hum is a name given to a series of phenomena involving a persistent and invasive, low-frequency humming noise, which is not audible to all people. Hums have been reported in various geographical locations. Among these are the Big Island of Hawaii, in Bristol in the UK, Taos, New Mexico, Bondi, Australia, New Zealand, and elsewhere. It's a low throbbing sound, apparently, a bit like a distant idling diesel engine. Typically, the hum is different to detect with microphones, and its source and nature are hard to localize. And strangely, it's more audible to men than to women. In some cases, the hum is more audible inside buildings. It's often accompanied by vibrations that can be felt through the body. Earplugs have no effect on it, and it's often perceived more intensely during the night. To make it even more odd, the hum frequently cannot be picked up with microphones. There are even reports of deaf people being able to hear it, or feel it. For those who've never heard the hum, it can be hard to communicate just how disturbing it is, particularly as it is very hard to record. A recreation of the Taos hum was made for a TV show to demonstrate its effects, for example, and a university doctor did have some success in recording the Auckland hum from New Zealand, and this was shown to peak out at around 56 hertz, which is only 20 hertz above the lower level of human hearing. So, what is it? Well, one hypothesis claims that it's due to colliding ocean waves or a form of low-frequency tinnitus, but some sufferers claim it's not internal, being worse inside their homes than outside. And at the same time, others insist that it is equally bad indoors and outdoors. More mystery is added as some only notice the hum at home, while others hear it everywhere they go. Some reports indicate that it is only made worse by soundproofing, which only serves to decrease other environmental noise, thus making the hum more apparent. And people who suffer from both tinnitus and the hum describe them as being qualitatively different. And many hum sufferers can find locations where they do not hear the hum at all. An investigation by a team of scientists in Taos dismissed the possibility that the hum was tinnitus as highly unlikely. In some cases, explanations have been found. The Kokomo hum was traced to a pair of fans in a cooling tower at the local Daimler Chrysler casting plant, emitting a tone at 36 hertz. Another source was an air compressor intake at the Haynes International plant, emitting a 10 hertz tone. And studies at Cambridge's Addenbrooke's Hospital, which is just down the road from me, have stated that 2/3 of these hums are just people focusing on ambient noise. So what about the other third? In the world of darkness, the hum is most certainly not tinnitus, or ocean waves, or extractor fans, or air conditioning units, or anything stupid like that. No, in the world of darkness, the hum is the sound that the great spirits make when they make war on one another, and the clamour of battle bleeds across the gauntlet. Attempts have been made to map these sounds and discern the war cries of the legions of Umbrood as they clash with one another. There exists, it is said, an order of cutting-edge audiologists, cryptographers, and white noise experts who've been cataloguing their discoveries. Just what might they have heard? Or perhaps the hum is the howls of the Neverborn, presaging the last maelstrom that will rack the Shadowlands and wake them from sleep. If the Society of Necronauts from an earlier secret frequency were able to hear these, what strange interpretations would they draw from these sounds? Perhaps these noises are not from the far side of the gauntlet at all. Werewolf the Apocalypse features a race of creatures called the Vujunka, a worm-tated race of subterranean beasts. Could the hum be the sound of their cities, or their incessant tunneling, their strange and unearthly hymns? Why are they only heard in some places? Have these locations been chosen as points of emergence when the Vujunka finally raise their heads to glare at a distant and malevolent sun? And for our New World of Darkness players, perhaps the hum is indeed the sound of machines, or one machine in particular. What if the hum is the sound of the God machine itself, audible in those places of the world where its work is most needed, or most audible? What else might be lurking in those places where the hum is heard? Are there strange angels tending to the God machine, watching over its eternally churning gears, wielding terrible weapons in its defense? How many of those who hear it have seen them? And if they have, how many can remember the encounter? So next time you hear a peculiar humming in the background, don't check the air conditioning. So what about you guys? You had any thoughts about that?
Indeed, I do. In Darker Days, episode number 25, which isn't even released yet, we interviewed...
Wow.
Yeah. We interviewed Sam Chupp, right? And he is one of the original writers of Wraith. Exactly when he starts discussing Wraith, you hear in the background a soft, like, woo, woo, a soft hum, which is clearly this supernatural occurrence. By him talking about this cursed game, he brings up this link to the spirit world.
Excellent.
Oh, but right, the World of Darkness. I as well was thinking about spirits, but I took a different approach with this humming noise. I was figuring that perhaps there's this ancient ability in all humans to sense the spirit world, and it comes out in sound, because there's movement, and whenever there's movement, there is sound, even in the spirit world. And in particular, in these certain locations where this humming commonly takes place, that is where mortals most sense a large, perhaps, conflict with spirits, or maybe there's a very large spirit there, or perhaps an earthbound or a Zemitzi Kaldun earth spirit as well, bound to the land.
Yeah, earthbound would be fun. Yeah, definitely.
I was going to go with, because I've been reading Book of Spirits recently just to help a friend start a game. And of course in that it talks about the fact that spirits and the realm of spirits can be contacted via numerous methods. And so maybe the hum is something that could be tapped into by scientists, maybe physicists who are playing about with devices which are able to literally tap into the frequency of the universe. And the hum is maybe this universal noise, this sound, which is to do with the grand collapsing wave function of our reality. And by tapping into it, they can manipulate our reality or cross boundaries or draw things over it. And I mean, it's I'm sure you could tie it in. It's very similar what I'm suggesting to I think it's in World of Darkness Chicago, is it, where they talk about Bell Industries and their own particle accelerator, and how you do some badass science and you think it's science you're doing, but really it's tapping into something more fundamental and supernatural in nature, and then something comes over the gauntlet and possesses you.
Like a spiritual version of the cosmic microwave background radiation noise.
No, that's the perfect way to describe it. And it doesn't have to just be related to spirits to do with the shadow. It could be to do with any of the astral realms within Mage, or perhaps the realm where the Koshilim come from in Promethean, because we talked about Promethean last episode. That would be actually really cool if the hum was to do with to precede the appearance of one of those spirits of this fundamental force.
Yeah,
well, that ties back into the God Machine thing quite nicely. So yeah,
exactly.
Here's another idea, though. Perhaps this hum, this sound, is actually suppressing something. And for those of you that know physics, if you play back the same exact wave and it clashes with something else, there is no sound. If you were to do that and suppress this sound, what would happen? What would you unleash?
Cool.
So you're almost saying that the hum is the will of the exarchs trying to cover up something on a global scale with this a simple hum.
Mm-hmm.
Echoes from across the supernal. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
How about is there any way? I mean, I mentioned this in pre-show in email with the notes about how it's very similar to another similar event, which is called the bloop, which is another ultra low frequency, which I'm just reading occurred out in the ocean in 1997. And it's, again, it's similar.
Bloopy is creepy. That thing is.
God, yes. You just need to listen to that thing, and you're just like, yep, something's out there. Kill it with fire.
Well, there's a bunch of these things. When I was looking into the hum, there's a bunch of they listed at the bottom about 5 or 6 different peculiar sounds that have been picked up in the ocean. Some of them they reckon are the sound of ice scraping against ice, or scraping against land, echoing up down from Antarctica. But others, the bloop in particular, is like 100 times louder than the noise made by a blue whale. And the way that the sound manifests itself, they do believe it to be organic in nature. So I just think, what the hell is this? And there's a couple of organic sounding noises coming up out of the ocean, which is just, it's a vastly unexplored territory. So, yeah, ripe material there for storytellers to go and get their feet wet.
So for the main segment of this episode, we have an interview with our brand new World of Darkness online correspondent, Harlequin, Peter from over at WoDnews.net, or as I like to call it, WoD News.
WoD News, yeah.
Yeah.
We recorded this a little while ago, actually, but it's not seen the light of day. It's been languishing in the vaults for a few weeks. But so thanks for your patience there, Harlequin. But yeah, here we go.
Right now, Mark and I are joined by Peter, the enigmatic Harlequin of WoDnews.net.
Hello all.
Hey, Peter.
So ever since Darker Days began, we've always stated that the World of Darkness online game would be a focal point of the show.
Yeah.
And it still is. But I think Mark and I both realized that it's been a bit of a red-headed stepchild on the show.
It took something like 5 minutes to get through everything we could find in the first time we brought it up, and we've barely doubled that since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so White Wolf's been tight-lipped about the game so far, and you really have to be pretty methodical to find new details about the games. And this is where Peter and WoDnews.net come in. We've entered into kind of a partnership to bring listeners all the coolest content about World of Darkness Online. And you'll see this segment frequently in upcoming Darker Days episodes whenever there's groundbreaking news or we have something very specific to discuss about World of Darkness video games. So without further ado, let's let Peter talk a bit about his geek cred and what WoDnews.net is all about.
Wow, geek cred. That puts a lot of pressure on me. Okay.
Yeah, it's big time, man.
It is. The pressure is on Harl right now. Well, welcome. I want to thank everyone, and I certainly want to thank you two for giving me this opportunity. I definitely look forward to this partnership. WoD News, or actually, this is the first time I've heard it called WoD News. That's interesting. You just started a new trend, I think.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
WoDnews.net. It sounds a little general. A lot of people actually come here looking for a generic, also all vampire, werewolf, such news. But actually, the MMO is actually just simply called World of Darkness. And originally they started off with World of Darkness Online, and last summer the online got dropped. So now it's just simply World of Darkness, and which I think is going to actually probably cause some confusion going down the road, because as we all know, World of Darkness is the umbrella term used for the whole universe, and now they're using it specifically for the MMO too. So I think that's going to be a little confusion. But nonetheless, that's why it's called WoDnews.net. Essentially, I'm trying to create a hub where people who are looking to network with other like-minded players, specifically it's going to be very role-player centric, very role-player friendly. As for myself, I created NWN2News.net. This was a Neverwinter Nights 2 news and community site, very similar concept to what I'm doing here with WoD News. I ran it for 3.5 years. It was the most high-traffic, non-commercial site for Neverwinter Nights 2, and I really helped network and bring together a lot of server administrators, players, and really got a lot of exclusive news for the community. I really enjoyed doing that, and when I heard the vampire MMO, the little rumors, shall we say, in a couple of years ago, I decided this was absolutely something I wanted to get into, being a big Vampire Masquerade fan. At the time, I really wasn't sure if they were going Masquerade or Requiem, but either case, I definitely wanted to get on board, and so I created the site, and I'm hoping to do with this site what I did with NWN2News.net, is bring the community an exclusive, focused site where they can get all their news. We're not a convoluted site where we're trying to do this on top of all sorts of different aspects. We're specifically geared to the MMO, and that's where our focus and our primary mission will always lie. As I said previously, we have a very interesting and unique system. We have actually a profile system that works very, very similar to Facebook. You can have a friends list. You can have your own personal gallery. You can post your own personal blogs on your wall. You can post all other different types of media like videos and MP3s, for example, game sessions and such. So it's a very organic way to network, meet other like-minded people, create guilds, create your own fan page for certain aspects of the game. As more details come about, I'm sure guilds and certain types of player types are going to emerge. And so I really think, and I'm really hoping that the community takes hold of this, grabs it, takes a ball and runs with it and see what they can do with it. As I said, I'm just essentially trying to create a focal point, and then hopefully the community grabs it and runs with it and does what they can with it. And as I also mentioned previously, I'm really a big role player. I've been role playing since the early '80s. Redbox D&D, I'm sure.
Nice.
Yes,
Outstanding.
Yes. And then let's see, Blue Box Basic Set. Redbox Basic Set, Blue Box Expert Set. The companion set was tan, I believe, and then the master set was
green. It was
green.
Gotcha.
And the black masters,
Yeah,
and then the gold was the immortal set. Yes,
That's right.
see? Yeah. Okay, 4 out of 5 isn't bad. 4 out of 5.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
We'll give it that one.
I jumped all over as I think most of the people listening to this podcast have done. I've done everything from Stalking the Night Fantastic to Shadowrun to the FASA Star Trek RPG, the TSR Marvel role-playing game, Palladium. I don't know why no one ever talks about Palladium anymore, but I thought that was a really amazing D&D-like role-playing system.
Palladium Fantasy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's got its adherence. It has to be said. Yeah.
Right. I really think it's underrated and was really overlooked. Sort of like the Stalking the Night Fantastic game. I really felt for a kind of X-Files-like role-playing game, which essentially it was X-Files before X-Files came about.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. When I first actually saw the first season of X-Files, I really thought one of those writers would have to pick up Stalking the Night. I really did. It just baffled me how, because you got the secret, the little buried, covert little branch of government. In this case, a branch of the FBI, but same basic concept.
Yeah.
Going out and have all these paranormal things you sent to investigate. It's very, very similar concept. I believe it or not, actually a few years back, online bumped into the I forget his name at this point because it's been so long, but I actually bumped into the creator of that game.
Fun.
Had a nice little email exchange, and he's like, "Yeah, we're still around." He goes, "I'm actually working on the next revision of Stalking the Night Fantastic." Actually, so and I actually Googled him a few months back, and actually they're still around. So it's
cool.
If someone's looking for an X-File like RPG,
wow. So where is the MMO at the moment? I mean, how far along is it in development? Do you know?
Well, yes. Little pieces of information have come down. What we do know is the MMO went into full production about a year ago. It was last March of last year. They actually it went pre-production to full production. Pre-production, for those people not in the development biz, basically pre-production is when you're gathering all your notes. You're doing some mock-up coding just to kind of presenting a few different types of frameworks you want with some very skeletal coding. You are working on your concept art, various different types to choose one type to go with. That's you're writing up your design document, the what you want in the game, what you don't want in the game, hashing out your ideas and that kind of thing. When you go into full production, then you finally more or less narrow down what you want in the game, what you don't want in the game, and then you actually start the actual detailed coding. You have a much more focused roadmap of where you're at and what the end result kind of game you want to be is.
Right.
The software development field is always a dynamic, not a static thing. That is why, and this is actually we're going to get to the when we're talking about the info lockdown. This is partly one of the reasons, and this is one of the reasons pretty much almost every developer does this. They really don't get deep details onto what's going to be in the game and what's not, simply because they might have the best concept for a feature right now, and it is this groundbreaking, revolutionary. This is the best thing since sliced bread. But 6 months down the road, they may say, you know what, we just don't have the time for this feature, so we got to yank it, and maybe we'll push it down to an expansion pack or such.
Right.
However, if you announce that, if they came out today and say, hey, we got this new great feature and this is what it is, and everyone gets all worked up in a tizzy about it, and then 6 months they say, sorry, our bad, it's not going to be in, the amount of nerd rage they would endure would be essentially, like I always like to say, putting out nerd rage is essentially trying to fight a forest fire with a squirt bottle. You just can't, it's just not going to happen. So rather than...
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it could destroy the internet, but then I decided not to. But now you've made me say it. So
yeah. I could just imagine the hate email I'm going to get after this. However, but you see what I'm saying. It's they just, and I've seen this happen on MessageWise. I've seen these people. I've seen developers say, "Hey, this is going to be in the game." Everyone gets worked up in a tizzy. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Everyone's around campfires singing "Kumbaya." And then down the road, they just realize they don't have the zots for it, and they realize, sorry, it's not, maybe in an expansion or maybe as a free add-on down the road. Well, that doesn't quell the anger, and it just turns into a huge PR nightmare. So that's basically the reason a lot of developers, and specifically when we're coming to CCP and White Wolf right now, why they why this info lockdown is there. They do not want to go through that. And I also think they're kind of playing off, and I give them credit for this. I think they're playing off the whole Vampire Society secrecy thing. They're just releasing a little bit of, and they're playing off that whole thing. Because even at this point, some developers would be given maybe one or two screenshots by this point, or maybe a little bit of game mechanics information. Maybe not a lot, again, not a lot to, something that they definitely know is going to be in. There's zero chance it's going to be cut. So they won't walk into that whole landmine of announcing something and then having to pull it and then enduring all the anger for it and all the internet rage for it. But so I think they're playing off that. The danger, I say, and I posted this on my site, the danger of this is when you don't have a baseline of expectations because you're being so secretive, then those expectations can get wildly out of control. So when you do present the product, the expectations bar has been set so high because you never set a bar that people might get disappointed. And that's the real issue going this route that White Wolf's going.
Right, but I mean that said, there's been a surprisingly large amount of information. When I was over at your site this afternoon looking at, there's a thread that summarizes most of Justin Achilles' comments from Masquerade last year, and that's a massive list of stuff there that has come out over, I guess, either over the course of the previous months or was just released at Masquerade.
Right.
And I was surprised, quite excited by a number of the things that I read.
So, Peter, if I could just jump in here.
Absolutely.
So the fans they have their own wild expectations. And what are some of the expectations that you've seen on your website? I mean, you've got very active forums. You got a lot of lot of activity going on. So what are people saying? What are people expecting?
Well, they're the two biggest things right now. Well, actually, there's two and a half, I'll say. The third one's kind of depending, various different forms of talking about it. But the two biggest things right now that Universal, that's the fans are expecting, there's a big argument or discussion, depending on how your point of view, whether they are going the one server Eve route or they're going multiple servers / shards route. That's one of the big things being discussed right now. My personal view, because what a lot of people don't realize about how the game's actually being broken up between CCP and White Wolf. CCP is handling the engine and the back-end development of the MMO. White Wolf is working on the game mechanics writing of the MMO. So because CCP, the maker, creator of Eve, is working on the back end, the engine, the client, the graphics engine, Icarna, and the server software, and that the very back end technical aspect. Because their experiences with the one server, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say they're going to stick with what they know. And I just because of that, if White Wolf was developing the back end, then I'd say it's probably a coin toss. But because the makers of Eve are working on that aspect of the MMO, if I was a betting man, I'd definitely say that it's going to go the one server Eve route and not the multiple server route. And because of some of the comments made at the Grand Masquerade, where again they didn't really come out and say exactly, but they implied that that it's going, it's probably going to be open PvP, perhaps some asylum areas where PvP isn't allowed, but basically it's going to be they kind of implied when it comes to combat it's going to be survival of the fittest.
The impression I got there's a comment that you're going to have the ability to flag yourself for PvP allowability.
Right.
So I guess you'll have a toggle that you can turn on, going, I can be PvP killed or not, or what have you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, because they're doing it that route, it really implies to me, again, they're going to go the Eve route, and CCP is going to again stick with what they know and go the one server route. PvP again is a big discussion. A lot of people do have concerns about how the PvP is going to work. If you do flag yourself for PvP, a lot of people are concerned that they don't really like, as role players, what is expected when it comes to combat versus just someone who's essentially playing in a spreadsheet MMO like Eve. No offense to Eve, but let's be honest. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet that's been turned into an MMO. Let's just be honest about it. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. I mean, Eve has, I believe the last time I read about it, had 300,000 active subscribers. Clearly, there's a lot of interest in playing a spreadsheet MMO. So I'm certainly not dissing those 300,000 people. However, those people playing in space, essentially, as I said, doing some very trading and mining and all that, and having space battles, their concept and their goal and their interest in the game, I think, is going to be a much different segment of the MMO population as a whole than the ones who play dark, gothic, secretive vampire MMO. And I think there's the ones who play Eve, there's a lot more slack of fighting and dying than there is going to be the kind of mindset and the role, probably a lot of role players who are going to play a vampire MMO. And it's going to be almost apples and oranges. I think the Eve players are going to have, again, like I said, a lot more leniency and a lot more open-mindedness. Oh, Bob just blew me up in my ship. Oh, that really sucks for me. Okay, I guess I got to go, start all over again. Whereas in the vampire, looks like they're going for some sort of final death. Again, if I was a betting man, I think either there is going to be some kind of final death mechanic. And if that's the case, then it's going to be a lot different than having your ship blown up, getting in your escape pod, going back to spaceport, buying another ship, or getting one of your other ships out of mothballs and going back out again, versus if you die in a PvP, and however they do the final death mechanic, whether it's X amount of deaths and then you're permanently dead, or it's a one-time deal, whatever the case, again, the severity is apples and oranges. And I think, I'm sure they realize that. I am sure White Wolf is not overlooking the severity of the situation, but I think the players are, as I said, a different level of expectations. And when it comes to PvP and final death, I think that's a very serious issue, and I think it does deserve a lot of debate, which there is a lot of debate all across, just not on my forums, but other forums I've seen. It's a lot of concern that if we are going to do PvP and it's pretty much going to be an open world, if you flag yourself, then, one way or the other, then that's what you are. And okay, so be it, but what are the repercussions? And on the flip side, what are the rewards? And that's really something that, we really don't have any answers to. But the way they're talking, again, if I was a betting man, I'm definitely in the camp, there's going to be some level of final death. And having a vampire MMO based on the Masquerade, more or less, I just don't see how they can't do that. I don't.
No, it has to be in the game.
I don't see it. I don't see any realistic way where any Masquerade or Requiem or White Wolf / World of Darkness fan as a whole will take the MMO seriously if I just press a button, I respawn, and I can just, go about my merry way. Endlessly, like, a WoW or an Ultima Online or Age of Conan or whatever the case may be, kind of system. I just don't see how the game will be taken realistically if there is no penalty for your kindred to die, like final death. I just don't see it.
No, if you've got a horror game, then death has to be a present threat. I think I agree. Yeah. So PvP, the possibility of final death, single server versus multi-server. These are the main issues that are getting the discussion at the moment. You reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. And the two ones that are kind of go in spurts. Day-night cycle. There's a lot of people concerned about that. They feel, well, if I roll a kindred and not a kind, then if it's daytime, if there's a amount of daytime, then what in blue hell am I going to do if I can't go outside? There are ways. I think that people are getting a little too wrapped up in this. I think any good game developer can certainly find ways. There can be sewer missions. There can be opportunities for the socialization and role play aspect of the game indoors. So I think I'm not too concerned about that. I think if they do go with the day-night cycle, and also a lot of people are concerned, well, it's going to be nighttime for 12 hours. And my reply to that is, it doesn't have to be a 1-to-1 ratio. Just like in a lot of computer role-playing games, an entire day-night cycle takes place in about a real 2-hour time period. So just because what the game time is in game doesn't necessarily have to always equate to what the real time is. So you can have you can have 90% night and 10% day.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I mean, they addressed it a long time ago in the Ars Magica game, where you'd create a mage character in that, and you'd also create a number of his mortal servants and followers, and you'd alternate depending on who you'd play each session, so you can certainly address that in a vampire game, where maybe during the daytime you play your vampire's ghouls or his mortal allies or followers. But yeah, like you say, there's any number of ways you can address that issue.
Oh, absolutely. And these people they're not inexperienced when it comes
they know
to
what they're doing,
yeah. They're not inexperienced at all. And, while, yes, the medium is different from writing a pen and paper RPG to a digital medium, obviously there are some significant differences you got to take into account. But as a whole, writing game mechanics is writing game mechanics, medium irrelevant. And these people have a tremendous amount of experience under their belt. So the last thing I'm worried about is them making some really poor choices on that level.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I think we've heard quite a bit from you, Peter, and why don't we all talk about what we're really excited about with these games? Mark, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I'll take the obvious one right out off the bat. I mean, as an old World of Darkness player, I'm excited about the fact that it's based in old World of Darkness intellectual properties to a certain degree. The fact that it's, Vampire the Masquerade with the best elements cherry-picked from Requiem, of course, but I think that's fantastic. And of course, reading through some of the stuff that's been released over at WoD News, you'll see references there to other supernatural creatures, and there being a set limit on supernatural creatures. So that, of course, gets me excited, thinking that it's not just going to, be limited to vampires. Over time, we might see Guru or even mages cropping up. That would just be fantastic. Looking at some more specific details. There was a mention that the character that you play is not just going to be dropped tabula rasa into the world. There'll be random backgrounds, then connections to the world, and hooks into world participation. I think as making that part of your starting character creation process, I think is a great idea. That you get backgrounds generated or contacts or allies generated, and then these exist in the world as NPCs whom you can go and visit and see and call upon. And as I mentioned just now, the finite numbers of the supernatural creature types, I think that's a good idea, more because of what it suggests about the larger game world. And I saw a note that you'll be able to play members of the Sabbat, which is just, cool. Awesome in a tin. Yeah, fantastic. And also a note that it's going to stay true to the adult content of the World of Darkness, including blood, gore, darkness, and tits, which is just, just doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Nope, it doesn't. All right, so the things that I'm excited about, they've mentioned that there's going to be multiple tiers of gameplay. There's going to be lounge gameplay, there's going to be sandbox gameplay, and there's going to be amusement park, basically. And what those three mean is a lounge is anyone that played like Vampire the Masquerade Redemption, that Vampire the Masquerade game from 2000, they'll remember that the most popular map on the multiplayer games was just this 3 rooms where you would walk around, talk, maybe the storyteller would put in something for you to fight, but it's mostly just a lounge to chill in, and that kind of social aspect I think would be very interesting. I'm interested to see how they'll work the amusement park. That's referring to a almost World of Warcraft style of gameplay where you can like do quests and the like. If they can make that something similar to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, that other video game, where there's like some interesting single player quests for you to do, that could be good. Perhaps when you're waiting for other people to get online, you can do that. And the sandbox gameplay, well, I haven't heard many details on that, but that could be really interesting. I would like to see, with the overall structure of this game, if they have one server, if they had different cities that you were placed in, for example, Boston, New York City, Los Angeles, out over there, and maybe they'd have like the same overall map for the city, so you wouldn't get lost if you travel to a different one, but they might have like certain landmarks and the like. That could be really cool, and being able to influence these real world cities could really enhance the game.
Having something that feeds back your player actions into the game world would really make it come alive as a vibrant World of Darkness setting, I think.
Absolutely. I'm really going to be surprised if they don't have any real world cities in the game. I'd actually be shocked. I totally agree with both your points. Those are more or less exactly what I was looking for. Partly, again, you might love it, you might hate it, you might be indifferent to it, but I think the Masquerade setting is the setting they should have picked for the most part. And a lot of people are saying, well, the rules aren't as good as Requiem, this and that. Well, all they said is the setting. The behind-the-scenes mechanics can be very Requiem-ish. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think on the surface, you're going to see the Masquerade, Terra Merla, the Sabbat, so on and so forth. Those two factions, you're battling it out. Perhaps some neutrals in there for kicks. and I think that's going to be the big dynamic of the MMO. However, I think a lot of the game mechanics under the hood, they're probably going to borrow a fair amount from the Brick Creator. And that's I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I, as an old school guy, I gotta say, I kind of like the whole concept of generation. However, I understand that might not work very well in a digital format, that mechanic. And so it wouldn't surprise me if blood potency, becomes the one of the main stats of your character on that level.
Blood potency and generation are not too hard to interchange either, so I think we'll find some fairly happy middle ground there. I agree, with your kind of analysis there that we'd probably see more Requiem style mechanics under the hood and Masquerade as the default setting. But then I think Masquerade's a good choice because the old World of Darkness in general was more of a shared setting experience, because it had Kanan, because it had Metaplot.
Right.
Whereas New World of Darkness has a much more toolbox approach. And so any given New World of Darkness game is more likely to differ from one table to the next, simply because, one guy might be using the Lancia Sanctum and the other guy might not have them in his game, but he's changed the Circle of the Crone into something else, etc., etc.
Right.
Because it really, it encourages that out of the gate. Whereas I think Masquerade lends itself more to a shared world experience simply because there is all, however many years it was, 13 years of setting lore accumulated. I think they've got a lot more shared experience that they can draw on. So yeah, I think it'll be fun to see.
Absolutely, and I really think the whole meta plot concept, just to follow up on what you said there, I think it kind of gets a bad rap. Yes, toward the end, probably was a bit convoluted. It was a little hard, but on the flip side, the number one rule of role-playing, use what you want and ignore what you don't.
Exactly.
And so, they can take the best parts of the meta plot, put it in the MMO, and the rest can end up in the recycle bin. So,
yeah, totally.
And so on that level, I feel pretty good. I definitely think they should. The overall meta plot, the core of it, as I always like to say, save the fluff for the peanut butter. Cut away all the fluff, just get the core backstory, the core meta plot, and put that in the MMO. I think that'll add a lot of flavor. I think that'll add a lot of intrigue, and definitely set up for some very interesting storytelling.
Do you think the game's going to be able to compete with things like Eve or World of Warcraft? I mean, that's like saying who can compete with the Beatles. But
well, like I was alluding to earlier, I think the worst business decision they could make is go after a group of people that are already purchasing one of their MMOs. It makes absolutely no sense for them to put out an MMO that would gut their Eve subscriptions. It just makes no sense. And I think that's why you're going to get an apples and oranges kind of game. You're going to the Vampire MMO is going to cater to and be focused to a totally different sect of players versus what Eve attracts and what the type of players Eve grabs onto. And so I was actually having a debate on another forum with someone about this very topic, and they were saying, what kind of players from Eve, if they was arguing about some game mechanic I can't even remember about now, but they're saying if they do that, the Eve players won't migrate over. And my response was, they don't want the Eve players to migrate over. They do not want to gut Eve in this process. What they want to do is bring in a whole different sect of players and add to their subscription rates, not divide one group of subscription rates into two different MMOs, because that makes no sense for them business-wise whatsoever.
Well, it's part of what made Vampire the Masquerade a big hit back in '91 when it first came out, was that, it tapped into an existing player base, but it also attracted a whole bunch of people who'd never tried role-playing at all before under any system. And I think if World of Darkness, the MMO, can manage a similar feat, it'll be in good shape. Because, like you say, you don't want to attract the EVE players because they're your customer base, which will just be cannibalizing. But there's no need to chase the kind of people who want to play World of Warcraft. And what I'm reading, here, what's the kind of information that's been collected on the WoD news site, is that it really looks like they have identified fans of the vampire genre and fans of socially minded gaming, and they're building a game around that niche. So they're identifying a certain type of target audience and building a game that they hope is going to attract this kind of people. I mean, if they're going to take players away from anywhere, I'd almost suggest that it's going to be from places like Second Life.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and I will say, back in the late '90s, early 2000s, I actually ran. At the time, it was the most popular vampire role-playing IRC room, and then I actually, a few years after that, I actually got into the whole vampire role-playing scene on Second Life, and those two communities, believe it or not, there's still a lot of people who do our IRC role-playing even to this day, and there's a huge community involved in Second Life, partly due to the big, all the new TV shows and serials and such dealing with vampires. There's obviously a big push, and anything vampire is pretty much hot nowadays. But some creators actually created some Vampire Masquerade kind of HUDs and combat systems that you can actually attach to your Second Life character and make them into a quote-unquote vampire. And you can go around biting other people, making them into vampires. And yeah, it's like this whole, it's the typical pyramid scheme. It's really interesting. Last time I was in Second Life was about a year and a half ago. But when I left, those kind of systems were just burning hot, and there was a huge vampire role-playing community there. And I totally agree. I think catering to some of these IRC players who are very dedicated, they're very good role players, most of them. Same thing with a lot of the Second Life vampire community role players. Many of them are very, very good, and I think catering to them and bringing them on board, I just can't see any downturn to that. I think, no pun intended, it'll bring a lot of fresh blood into the WoD community, and I think it'll give us a shot in the arm that we really need. And I think grabbing people from all these different other related communities, I think it'll be good. It'll make us dynamic. It'll make us large, and I think there are only upsides to that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think White Wolf CCP have shown a surprising amount of savvy in the last few years. They've identified that they've got to get off the supplement treadmill as far as the role-playing games goes, transitioning to print on demand and PDF-only products, and now this moving their IP almost entirely online here. It's a bold move, but sooner rather than later, I think it's the way the industry's going.
Well, exactly. And it's funny. A few weeks ago, I found a quote. I don't have it with me right now, but it was on their site. But anyway, someone was posting, one of the White Wolf folks, and they were saying, we're trying to actually, one of the main keys for this site change was to get away from trying to just make it a commercial buy our product site and more a social interactive site. And that was one of their main goals. I think the jury's still out, quite honestly, mainly because when I go into their forums, the pure white just burns my eyes out of my sockets. But I think there's definitely a little tweaking need to be happening. But I respect that was one of their goals, and I think once they make some of these tweaks and make it so again my eyes don't burn out of my skull, I think for the most part it's mission accomplished.
Excellent. Yeah, I like the site. I mean, there's nothing that the ability to change your skin couldn't hurt. But it's clearly growing. But I like what I see so far. Yeah, it's nice. It's crisp. It's functional. It's good.
Great.
Well, Lost Heretic, where are you?
What?
We miss
Hey,
you.
what's up? I was actually just about to say, all right, guys, I think that's enough. We've had 40 minutes for a 20-minute discussion.
I know.
Yeah. Well, you can edit out the bit about the Star Trek role-playing game.
All right, very good. Well, Peter, thanks for coming on to the show, and we'll definitely have you on for another segment.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank both of you very much, and I'm definitely looking forward to being back, hopefully with some cool new information soon.
Outstanding.
Great.
So anybody who wants to find out more information about the World of Darkness, I'll say online, but just about the World of Darkness MMO, should just head on over to wodnews.net, wodnews.net, and you'll find all the information gathered together there. Active set of forums, useful FAQ, and more information than you can shake a dead cater fat. Very good.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see some new peeps pop in my forums.
Well, that was a very interesting interview, and
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Indeed. One thing I really want to highlight in this is that White Wolf is going to be handling the game mechanics, the story aspects, the style, the art, and all of that. And CCP is taking care of a lot of the technical aspects, the servers and all of that, as well as handling other things. And I think that it puts a lot of people at ease about this whole MMO concept, because it really is going to be a White Wolf game, and it's really going to be their interpretation of Vampire.
Yeah.
That sounds absolutely awesome. I mean, to literally leave the IP in the hands of the people that made it, and they're augmented by by another group who can deal with just the technical aspects. It's
They really know the business too, yeah.
Yeah, it leaves a level of purity to the game, and the people that are going to tweak the game and make adjustments for the online environment are the people that made the game. So they go, that rule was great on tabletop, but doesn't quite work in an online environment. When they say that, they mean it, because they're the guys that have played it for decades, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely, and it's clear that they really are having their top men on the job. Every now and then you'll see a post from one of the White Wolf staffers, and they'll mention, "Oh, I'm doing a lot of work on the MMO at the moment," and so yeah, they've definitely left it in the hands of the right people as far as the IP goes, and in the right hands of the right people as far as the technical side goes. EVE Online is a hugely popular and successful game, and with good reason.
Yep. And I was kind of thinking about this the other day, and EVE Online really, it's grown to be so popular because of the emergent behavior related to all the social dynamics. And White Wolf has already created their kind of behavior in their game through their LARPs. I think it's no surprise that they've taken the Grand Masquerade, the old Camarilla convention, and made that into their big place to announce things about both their role-playing games and this new MMO.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I was really pleased to see that it's being handled by CCP, because, as you say, the social aspect of EVE is what makes it really interesting for me. And Vampire is a game that is, in no small part, about the social interactions between the supernatural creatures of the night. So I think it's a match made in heaven, really, or some other.
Yeah,
but a match anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the great thing. I mean, a friend of mine is actually I think a few of my friends are actually in the games industry, and we talk about where CCP's going, and with WoD Darkness Online, and we always come back to, because they're gamers, they're involved in playtesting or doing the art for it, and we do tabletop roleplay, and we always come back to the idea that it's got to focus on this emergent social structures that occur in tabletop and occur in LARPs, and within an online environment could be so powerful in their own right, regardless of the game mechanics that are there. Because you only have to look at how, people turn to EVE Online and go, well, we can look at, the dynamics of how things are bought and sold.
Yeah.
And that's amazing in its own right. That EVE is this wonderful environment to look at economics, and so I guess I'm hoping Vampire is going to be this wonderful environment to look at how kind of a social economics works. Whether that social economics is going to be the buying and trading of blood is another thing.
Fascinating. Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
Yep, indeed. So I guess that's it for this show. Of course, as I mentioned before, episode 25 is going to be this outstanding interview with Sam Chupp, and as I said, we've already recorded it, and wow, he reveals some really cool things about White Wolf in its early days, and some great insight into the games that he's helped out with, which is actually all of the original
Almost all
storytelling
of
games.
them, yeah.
Wow.
No, I enjoyed that so much during the interview, hearing one of the guys, he's one of the first handful of people in White Wolf, and hearing the old war stories from back in the day, in addition to getting an insight into why certain decisions were made about certain games and how the development of these iconic games grew over the years. Well worth checking out. Well, whatever version of the World of Darkness you play, fantastic interview and a fantastic guest.
So, as usual, you can check out Darker Days on Facebook.com/DarkerDays. We, of course, have some discussion about the episodes, current White Wolf news. Hopefully, I'm going to be painting up some Werewolf the Apocalypse miniatures and Vampire the Masquerade miniatures, and we'll put little photos up for that.
Oh, cool.
So jealous. I'm so jealous. I have no time to paint toy soldiers. I did it for a living at one point. But yeah, it'd be cool to see some painted miniatures. Which White Wolf miniatures are these? I can't. I've tried to look online for them, and it's like to see the lead and what miniatures are they of?
They're Ralpartha miniatures that came out.
Yeah.
Let's see, which ones did I order? I got the Malkavians, Gangrel, Vampire Hunters, actually, like Hunters Hunted kind of Vampire Hunters. Those are pretty cool. And then some werewolf ones, Black Spiral Dancers, Silver Fangs. So
That's completely badass.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And of course, we've got twitter.com/darkerdaysradio. I guess I'm going to say this right now, if 20 people join before episode 25 hits the airwaves, I will do passive storytelling, and I'll try to make it funny as I go through, and I'll tweet.
If 50 people join, I'll post up a picture of me with the pink Barbie mic.
Oh, wow. Outstanding.
Oh, shit. Done it now.
And then, Mark, what's our email address?
darkerdaysradio@gmail.com.
Very cool. That's it for this episode. So long, everyone. Signing off.
Take care, guys.
Adios.
RPG.
And major props for the Star Trek, the Phase of Star Trek game too. That was a
Oh
classic.
yes,
A lot of fun with that.
the thing about the sorry, we're getting on a little tangent here, but the thing about the Star Trek RPG, I really found, I really enjoyed the character creation aspect. I thought it was pretty good, but
It's a mini game, yeah.
right, but what they got to a nail, and they really emulated well, was the starship combat aspect of it. You had things like Starfleet battles, but it's this big convoluted mess of rules. And I mean, you look at the stat sheet of a ship, and it's like, oh my God, I got to be a mechanical engineer to figure out what's going on. It's just this huge, convoluted, overly complex thing that actually isn't very Star Trek-like, because they put missiles in the ship, and they have all this other stuff which is fine if that's what you're into, but it really delved way too far from the canon as far as I was concerned.
Well, the the Phasor version, where you're kind of allocating resources to phasers and then diverting them to shields and the whole kind of thing.
I mean,
it captures the feel of it much better.
Absolutely. You could have a ship-to-ship battle that, you didn't have to buy a scientific calculator for to have a simple little battle. It was a 10-sided dice that did everything in the whole game system, whether you're dealing with characters or ship battles. The whole ship battle. I mean, I believe the book to explain how to do a battle was 40 or 50 pages, something like that. It was detailed enough where it gave you that feel, but it didn't bog you down in, page 19, paragraph 3, subsection 9, sentence 2C, the rule says this, which is what kind of how I felt Starfleet battles went. I tried to get into it, and, literally, I played this one game where it took almost an hour for one turn. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to be here for the next 19 hours with this one ship battle. This is just totally insane. And, not trying to beat up the war gamers. I mean, all the power to them. If that works for you, all the power to you, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. And so I really had a lot of respect for what FASA did with the Star Trek role-playing game. And I'm really sorry FASA closed their doors, too.
I'm
not.
See, now we need to find a segue from Starship Battles by FASA back to WoD Online. It's going to be kind of tricky. I don't know.
Yes.
Pull one out there.
With Star Trek, you explore strange new worlds and back to the world of darkness, which could potentially be one of the worlds they go to. The galaxy's a big place.
There was a Star Trek adventure in one of the digital web books for Mage. Has to be said. Yeah. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.